Welcome to Purpose Uprising, the podcast. I'm Jessica O'Kane, your host, and this podcast is an exploration of what it means to live on purpose. It's really about ordinary people doing extraordinary things in this life. It's the people that are truly tapped into their authenticity, who are showing up in this life as themselves, who are so tapped into their unique gifts, who are living in their purpose. These are the people that are doing extraordinary things, and these are the people that are truly making the world a better place. And it doesn't take much. Listen, I'm someone who asked myself the questions, who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? I asked these questions millions of times throughout my 20s and into my early 30s. And I can say with confidence, I know what my purpose is. And I know what yours is too. And you're probably overcomplicating it. So in Purpose Uprising, I will be having expansive conversations with people who are truly in their authenticity and living in their purpose. In some unconventional ways, others in surprising ways. So these conversations are not meant to teach you anything new. Really, my goal and my hope is that upon listening to these expansive dialogues, you will have your own aha moments. You will be guided deeper into your inner knowing. So this isn't about learning something new. It's not about a how-to. It's not about giving advice. It's about guiding you to connect with your inner wisdom, that deep inner knowing that has always been within you. Thank you for being along for the ride. You're going to love this. I can't wait to hear which conversations are your favorite and what your personal aha moments are. Remember, you are here for a reason. And that reason, spoiler, is not to wither away in a 9-to-5 job that means absolutely nothing to you and that drains you of your precious life force. There is a way for you to make the system work for you, and that way is easier than you think. In listening to this podcast, you're going to be challenged to rise to your purpose. I hope you take that challenge. So welcome to Purpose Uprising, episode 1. I'm so excited to finally share this with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It has taken me almost 2 months to finally put this episode together and publish it. There's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, this first conversation, this first podcast episode was actually recorded on this couch live. So every other podcast conversation that I've had so far has been virtual, and that requires far less editing. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is I had my own resistance that I needed to work through. And we'll be talking a lot more about resistance and how it can be your biggest portal to expansion. So I'm so excited to finally share this with you and share this with the world. In this first conversation, I'm actually speaking with Brit Firth, who is a multidimensional osteopath, a somatic healer, a yoga teacher, and an entrepreneur, among many other things. Brit and I met through her osteopath practice. She was actually recommended to me by a dear friend. Shout out to Allie. Brit really changed my life. She helped me to tap into my energy and to regulate my nervous system, which was something that I had no idea. I had no idea what nervous system dysregulation or regulation was before I met Brit. And so I started working with her about 3 years ago. And she's been an instrumental figure and healer and guide for me on my path to self-discovery. So I'm really excited to share her wisdom with you. In this conversation, we talk a lot about what it means to be authentically connected with your energy, with your power, and with your purpose. We also talk a little bit about human design. Nothing too deep. Neither of us are human design experts, but human design has played a big part in both of our self-discovery journeys. Brit happens to be a 2/4 manifesting generator. So for any of you who have a 2 or a 4 in their profile or have the same energy type, you will definitely take something really valuable away from this. So a few other topics that we really get into in this episode are money healing, big one, our self-imposed glass ceilings and how to break through them, and how to get quiet to hear your truth. This was such an expansive conversation. I'm so excited for you to have access to Brit's wisdom. So with that, let's roll into this podcast episode. Okay, Brit, I'm so jazzed that you're the first guest on my podcast. I'm just gonna be doing this the whole time. Yay. So this is our shoddy setup. You are deserving of so much more, which means that you will be on another iteration of this podcast if you will have me. But I'm gonna go right in, because the reason I wanted you to be the first guest on this podcast is because the whole, like, my vibe behind this is I don't want people to think that they need to be learning anything new. This is going to be about guiding people deeper into their own truth. So it's not about learning, it's about connecting to an inner wisdom that they already have. And you have been someone that has allowed me to connect with my inner wisdom through your work as an osteopath. And I've had the privilege of watching you evolve your osteo practice from kind of a clinical setting to something that felt so authentic for you. And I have goosebumps just talking about it, because I was able to experience that evolution. All to say, you have been like a massive power in my life in terms of connecting with my own energy and being able to follow it. So I was really excited when we found out that we're both manifesting generators. Okay, so human design is something that I've started integrating into my coaching practice, and I think a lot of people listening will have probably limited knowledge of human design, so we don't have to go super into it, but I'd love to hear how you've tapped into your energy type and what you've integrated into your practice as an osteo, into your practice of life, into your spiritual practice. But I'll keep the question at that. And I'm just going to swivel this mic to you so that you can start speaking your beautiful truth.
Thank you for all of that. Human design. For me, it's really become just a thing in the last year. I leaned into it as a map of possibility, really. And through that, I realized a lot of what I could lean into about my own self that might actually create flow for me. And one of those things is that I am a 2/4, which is a hermit and a community builder. And it's such a duality. It's such a at first, a confronting and confusing thing to hold. Both of those. It feels like a scale of how do I completely disappear and also get right into the center of a circle. And so I grappled with that a little bit, but also because it's really against the grain of what society has structured for us, of how we actually are in the workforce, how we show up and make money and do the things that we want to do, where we are able to have our livelihood and some security in that. Because for me, what that looks like is that I have a lot of ideas because I'm a manifesting generator, and I have a lot on the go, and I want to do a lot of things, and I want to be with my people. But my people are also very draining if I don't take space. And that's okay. And human design really gave me that permission to then look at what that hermit life looks like. And for me, it looks like not the 9-to-5, which I've really never done. I've never held a 9-to-5 job, actually, other than for a very small amount of time when I was 20. So figured that out pretty soon after entering the workforce, that it wasn't for me. But I actually have to remove myself from that which I love, my career as an osteopath and everything else that I do in that same vein. And I have to go quiet, and I have to not send any energy out. And once I started doing that, I started having the creative wellspring within me to do more of this authentic work that you so graciously shared. You've been able to be a part of my journey for, and that it's changed you. So I think that it led me to my authenticity. And when I leaned into it, I was actually able to find abundance and thrive and do the thing that everyone always talks about will happen when you're authentic, which is that you will be successful and you will feel purposeful and everything will fall into place.
Okay, so much from that answer, but I'm just going to pull on one thread, okay? Because I'm sure we'll come full circle with so much of what you just said. Talk a bit more about duality, because we were just chatting about this before recording, and that was the first light bulb moment that I had when you were speaking your wisdom just now. So talk a little bit more about that, because I know you have words to say.
Yeah, I think duality is interesting. It really makes me think about my work and how if I were to say something that I've been afraid to say about my work because I feel like it's really controversial for many people or might really confront people, and then that little inner voice in my head goes, well, then some people might not want to work with you, Brit. And so then there's that scarcity that inner dialogue will bring sometimes when it's trying to protect us. The thing that I want to say about duality is really that there has to be some kind of spiritual motivation or divinity to any healing work that we do, any purpose work. And the duality is that we always have a scale of what we could attribute as the factors that have led us to where we are and why we might feel, and here's the duality of like broken or impossibility. There's always it's like the coin can flip in any moment, and the spiritual aspect of the work is that when you really drop into it, you have to get to a point where it becomes spiritual for you, because you realize that you actually do have a purpose and that the coin can be flipped in any moment. And then the only person who can choose that is you. So in my line of work, if you come just to heal the body, then you'll only get so far, because the body is energy and the energy has a story. And the story means something to you, and there's that coin. So if you let it open you up and expand you to that spiritual essence of everything, the purpose, the divinity, then the duality is actually like the game of life. It's not something that you have to succumb to or that you're a victim of.
Do you think that everybody has a unique energetic signature? And I'll tell you where this question's coming from. And maybe the question is not do you think, it's tell me about people's unique energetic signature, because in my practice, in my bones, I know that everyone is here with a very unique calling and a very unique purpose. But I think at times that can be a little bit scary for someone to think, well, okay, that means my life only means one thing, and what if I'm doing it wrong? But I have this idea that purpose plays into your energetic signature and vice versa, and I feel like you have not only something to say about it, but probably you've experienced that. So say more about that.
I really want to pull from what you said about people thinking about their purpose and it's just this one thing. It's like it narrows us down a hallway, that we're here for one reason. And I think that's where we all get confused or lost or stuck on purpose, because actually our purpose is the same as human beings. It's to experience love. and to experience where we are not in alignment with love and why we might not be, so that we can then experience more of it. And so that's really our purpose. And then what I would call like our dharma, because I have a background in the yogic scripture, the dharma being like what you're here to share, how you're here to evolve the people around you, to support the people around you. That's something different. And some people call that a purpose too. And if I were to define what an energy type is in that, it's like some of us are there to be the manifesting generators, where we've got the ideas and we're moving. And in the generators, they have the energy to actually make it happen, or be the leader, be on the stage talking about it. And then there's the people that are like holding the space around that, but we all play a very purposeful role. And it's really all to get us to a place where we feel like we belong, like we matter, like we're seen, and like we're heard.
Yeah. I've never thought of purpose and dharma as separate. And that was just a like mind blown moment. I loved what you said about our purpose being to experience love. And I think what I take from that is, especially if, and we won't make this all about human design, but that we all have different defined and undefined energy centers. And the whole point of us being here is to lend balance to the universe, right? It's like we're all a part of an ecosystem, and where we're giving, someone else is meant to receive, and where you're meant to receive, someone else is going to give. And I think that's the magic. And when someone learns to connect with their own energetic signature, I think that's how we make the world a better place. But I think, and you said this earlier, society is not really set up for this right now, right? We're still run by capitalism, and we still feel like we still have to pay the bills, right? And so I guess my next question for you is like, how have you reconciled that piece, the piece of like existing in the world as it is, right? And your own spiritual wisdom and your own sense of purpose and dharma. How have you reconciled those two things?
Such a big question. And I think I feel the weight of it just because there's parts of this that I just innately had as a soul coming into this life that I recognize are hard and hardships for other folks. So I had no problem with being like, I'm just always going to have enough money. And there were many times where there was not very much of it. And if you looked at me on paper, it looked real bad. Like, real bad.
I've been there too.
So by no means did it look like all of the things that we strive for security and safety and comfort in this life necessarily. But inside, there was always a belief that it was always going to work out for me. And so I leaned into that, and I just knew that I had to just be myself and work toward that and do what I love, and then I would end up somewhere good. And I call it the game with the universe, and that's what I let it be. I let it be playful like that. I take a tiny little bite sometimes where I just find a 4-leaf clover, and I associate that with being, I'm in the right place at the right time right now. And then there's big risks where I like throw a bunch of money at a new business venture and I trust in a bigger way, or I play the game in a bigger way and see what comes back. And that can be determined by all of us individually. Like, what does a small bite look like? What does a big bite look like? But if we're not playing the game in some way like that, where we see what we could get when we throw the cards into the pile, then we're really just operating as if we're at whim to everything happening to us, which is powerless.
What you just said about things happening to us and feeling powerless, to me it's something that I often talk about as the victim mindset, but that's such a triggering way to say it. A lot of people don't like to think of themselves as, no, I'm not a victim. But it's powerless. It's giving up your power. It's outsourcing permission. It's outsourcing everything. But I love how you talk about the game, because I think that implies a really beautiful, like, playfulness. You're basically saying, like, life is meant to be playful. There is actually no one way to do it right. Like, if you're playing a board game, you can get to the end and be the winner from with so many different journeys on the way there. And I think that's really beautiful. What I find really striking about your answers, and even how you, like, communicate, you've always struck me as someone who is so deeply connected. And you even talked about that brief 9-to-5 job you had when you were 20, and you knew. And you keep talking about this, like, deep inner knowing and this belief, and you're not challenging the belief, like, it's just there. And that, I'm going to bring my comment full circle, brings me to 2 words that I came across in my research when I was prepping for this, that you use a lot across several of your modalities, not just osteo, but also yoga and also energetic practice. And it's inhabiting your body. I guess that's 3 words, inhabiting your body. And I think that clearly has something to do with why you have such a strong connection to your inner wisdom and your inner knowing. So what does it mean to not inhabit your body? And for someone who just came across this conversation and is listening, do you have any advice on how to start inhabiting your body? I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think in this context that, like, our body represents us actually fully being alive. When we choose to live outside our body, we only want to be a percentage of fully here and online. And so in my work as an osteopath, a lot of the times I see people who are really up in the mental space. And you can tell, you can discern that in a small practice, even just right now while you're listening, by just seeing where you would locate yourself. If you think of who's the you that's listening right now, are they somewhere in your body, or do you feel that they're kind of etheric, like they're kind of up in space, or it feels like it's even just in your brain? That's a good way to just discern, okay, am I in my body, or am I actually really mostly in my head space? And when we're up in there, then we're the closest to our analytical brain, like the us that's just gauging what we should be reacting to in life based on what's happened prior. And it can be very unconscious, but when we're in the body, it's like, oh, I'm right here. I can feel my reaction or my response to the stimulus of my life. And then hopefully, if the nervous system's also regulated, then we have a choice point where we get to choose, well, what do I want this moment to be like? Who do I want to be about this moment? Rather than, well, what just happened there? I feel like life just came at me. Yeah.
I'm like taking big breaths over here because I'm having so many aha moments. Well, my laptop wants to finally update, so that's wonderful. We're going to keep being really organic with this. So, choice points, Brit. This is also, like, those are 2 words I've been using a lot. And I think that we come up against choice points at, like, thousands of times a day, but often we don't realize that even the smallest choices that we make every day have the potential to have, like, the wildest ripple effects in our life. You strike me as someone who has consistently followed their energy. You've built new businesses. You've informed your osteopath practice to make it so unique and so aligned with your energetic signature. Do you remember a specific choice point that was really impactful for you over the last, like, we'll say 10 years? Maybe we'll open it up to your life, but can you tell us about a specific choice point that was really impactful for you? And
I mean, hindsight is 20/20. Yes. So yeah, there were lots of choice points, and I chose in those moments. There's lots that I didn't choose, and I just reacted from my own inner subconscious defenses and my nervous system trying to protect itself. It's always wonderful to ask someone, and this is why having a life coach is so valuable, because if you can get someone else's bias of you or lens of you, like you are reflecting back to me about my work and my life and everything that I've accomplished, you get to see a lot of beauty. The internal landscape of all those decisions wasn't as rainbows and butterflies. A lot of like questioning, a lot of inner dialogue, which isn't unhealthy to have this inner dialogue. It's just, are you aware of it, or is it just running the show? So being aware of that inner dialogue, I then have that choice point, right? I hear myself. It's almost like the angel and the devil on either shoulder. There's a couple of angels in there. There's a couple of devils. And so one of the devils might be saying, like, Brit, you're ridiculous. You change your mind so much. Why can't you just make a choice what your career is? That individual in my mind also sees me as chaotic, unpredictable, insecure, unreliable to my clients. She's in there, and I let her talk, but she's not running the show. And then there's the reflection that I also have of myself that you just shared, like that I actually do have it all together, that I'm living my most authentic career life. I've come to a place in osteo where I wasn't doing that. I saw it, and then I decided to just be truthful, and now I have an extremely full practice and people who are that really want to be working with me because I'm being authentic and I've brought exactly my style to my work, because that's what matters to me and what I think the world needs. And so, yeah, it's interesting to reflect on, were there choice points? There were many, but the main one that I would say got me to this moment where I feel like a lot of puzzle pieces have come together in my osteopathic career, at least, was the birth of my son and leaning into that portal and letting it, and I don't know if I can swear on this podcast, but letting it fuck me right up. Like letting it just like rip it apart and mix it all back together in a different way. Like I just leaned into that and I said, I know this is going to turn into something. I'm traumatized right now by the shock, just the sheer shock of a human growing in me, coming out of me in the way that he did, and then becoming a mother for the first time. And so it really shook me up, and it was really that shock trauma of like, whoa, what just happened? What am I going to do with this like soup that I am now? And that's why I treat the way that I do now, was I let that change me.
We were just briefly talking about the gene keys earlier, and that just reminds me of the 3 levels of a gene key being the shadow, the beauty, and the city. Or the shadow, the gift, and the city, rather. And so it sounds like you saw the shadow for what it was. It was an initiation, rather than seeing it as something that could rock your world in all the worst ways. And I think that's more than just mindset, Brit. I think that there's like a spiritual evolution that you have lived through and embodied, which has kind of allowed you to get to that point. You talked about life coaching being so valuable, to have an objective, almost like an objective set of eyes on your life, to kind of Marie Kondo that shit, right? Like, I know that you worked with someone for, I think it was 6 months, and she seems rad, by the way. I can't remember her name right now. What is it?
Shout out to Stephanie Carlin. Amazing business mentor. Really taught me the piece that was missing in that spiritual experience. But yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, you just painted that picture of what I was saying earlier about how important it is for there to be a spiritual or divine layer to any healing or any shift that we're trying to go through. It's like it has to go there. Otherwise, it's not really going to make any sense to the 3D you. That's like, what is this all for? It's like it has to have that layer. What Stephanie did for me was taught me how to have my own conversation with Creator through the Theta brainwave state. And I was outsourcing that. And I've had a spiritual life my whole life, but there was always some kind of someone or some method is bringing me to it. And in Theta, brainwave healing, hypnosis, meditation, you can call it any of those things, but you're going up into the Theta brainwave state where you can actually reprogram your subconscious brain. And you go up on your own. She taught us to go up on our own. And so it's literally me having a conversation with the Creator within myself, finding the information I need that's stuck in there in the subconscious running the show, and then clear it right away. And so I was able to realize that I had different programs around poverty and definitely money, like a glass ceiling on myself with that. That was a big one for me. I had no idea that there was something running the scenes back there. And for me personally, it was one that was due in my generational line. I didn't realize that I actually had a vow of poverty so that I would stay at the same level as everyone in the generations before me, because I was scared in my subconscious self that I wouldn't be able to relate to them anymore if I made more than them.
That's so wild. I did some intense money healing this year myself, where I just did not, I have always loved money. I just didn't realize that I was getting in my own way in receiving it with ease. I had my own beliefs around money being hard. Like, money was always paired with difficulty and with adversity, and it needed to be sweat and toiled for. And then in this work and on my own spiritual journey, I've just realized that when we are fully inhabiting our body and when we are connected to spirit and connected to source, it's all of those three things. And you actually go all in on yourself and you follow your energy, that it is possible for one to attract money with ease. And that's still something that I have to anchor in myself every single day. Because like I said, I did that healing this year. I specifically tracked this to January. So we're July. So it was 6 months ago. And the wild thing for me is that all of this healing and all of this leveling up and this expansion and this connection to higher self is such a journey. And I think when I first started this type of work, I thought, you go through an initiation, you do a healing, you do an activation, and bam, it's done. You're good. And then you go along your merry way. And I love that you just laughed at that. You're like, oh, we wish that were so. What does your energetic practice look like? Maybe it's a spiritual practice. Are you doing this Theta brainwave stuff every single day? Is that too much? Is there a point where you're doing too much of this healing and you're not holding enough space for integration? And I think this is something that I'm curious about for my own practice. Yeah, I'd love to hear what your practices look like.
I refer to the information that we will acquire when we ask these questions to our own self and not externally as our own inner knowing. And I think that you can't acquire the certainty in your inner knowing unless you regulate your nervous system, because that puts you in your body again. So you can feel more sensation and you can get an idea of what the response is when you think about certain things. And then there is being able to have that inner conversation, like Theta brainwave is one way that you can do that, but there's so many roads. And it's one of my things that I love to endlessly study. And what I always realize is if I study something like, you could say gene keys, human design, astrological charts, tropical astrology, sidereal astrology, like they're all just trying to show you that you're this very unique blueprint of a human being. And the information is different. I'm putting that in quotations. It's different, but it all leads you to understanding yourself more. And it's the same with any practice of trying to cultivate that inner knowing or find answers. It's like there's not just one way to do it. It's just you should go on the search to find the way that you hear it and you have it land with you. So what I do personally is I have like a bunch of categories of being able to get information, for instance, of if I feel blocked, then I'll do that subconscious reprogramming. But I don't always do it that way. Maybe I'll also do a Joe Dispenza meditation where I land in that heart coherence. And then I have somatic practices if I feel stuck in my body, or meditation, nature time. There's all these different ways to get clear, I'd say. But I think at the root of it all is we need to have a regulated nervous system, or we need to have a sense of what that feels like and how we are if we are not in alignment with it. We need to be able to get a sense of that spectrum of where we are in our nervous system first. Then we get really clear answers. Because the nervous system is like that central channel down the spine from brain to body, body to brain, and also the spiritual centers in the field. It's like all of us really communicates and then lands into form through the nervous system, in my opinion. And so I feel like through all of my work, I've realized, oh, well, if we're not landing in some sense of regulation, then we're just reacting to everything. And so even our gut feeling is off because we're just reacting. So the gut feeling is just analyzing the threat and then reacting based on a way that we have reacted before that turned out good for us. That's not actually our truth or our inner knowing speaking.
I feel compelled to share a story about nervous system regulation because this is something I experienced with you. It was the day that I quit my job. Do you remember this? So I had just started working with a coach 2 weeks before that. And I don't know when the last time I would have seen you was, but I had an osteopath appointment with you. It was like a Tuesday morning or something. And I had the appointment and I went into work and something crazy went down at work. There was a big layoff. And while I wasn't directly impacted by the layoff, I was very strongly indirectly impacted with some people on my team having been let go. And I was having a conversation with my boss where she was effectively telling me, okay, target's gone way up, compensation's staying the same. And my response, and she was holding space for me. She didn't say it from that tone. It was actually a wonderful conversation, which is probably why this was possible. But my response was to cry. And it wasn't a crying of, I don't know where these tears are coming from. And I was able, because I had done an osteopath session with you and my system was regulated, I was able to tell her, I feel like I need to tell you where these tears are coming from. These tears are not coming from a place of frustration or anger. They're actually me grieving a past self. It's me grieving a past version of me that would have been chomping at the bit to go after this challenge and to rebuild this department from the ground up with you. And who gives a fuck if my quota changed? I'm gonna crush this. Like, that was a past version of me. And I was grieving her because there I was in that moment being like, I can rest easy right now knowing this no longer serves me. And I had been grappling with that knowing for months, maybe even years. I think I had been repressing that knowing for a really long time. I can even like feel it in my body right now as I'm speaking, because I kept thinking to myself, this is a great job. Like, you're making such good money. You're surrounded by good people. And I was in that like gratitude as a toxic trait, you know, when you're like, oh, I should be so grateful for everything I have. But that was actually my glass ceiling at that point. And it was because my nervous system was regulated that I was able to not only communicate that, but I left that meeting and I wrote my letter of resignation. I even wrote it like not with the intention of giving it. I was like, I'm just going to write it and see what this feels like. And it felt so right because I was inhabiting my body. And I was like, I can't argue with this. Like, and then I handed it in the next day. And I think I was at a retreat with you, like literally the next weekend. And I was like, yeah, I just quit my job. You're like, what? I just saw you last week. So yeah, just to really add substance and context to everything you just shared. Yeah, is there anything you want to say in response to that?
Such a great example of why doing the nervous system healing is so important, because it anchors you in a moment where you would have just given yourself away to the toxic gratitude. I mean, that's not really talked about at all. People talk about the spiritual bypassing and gaslighting, but what about when we give ourselves toxic gratitude, right? Actually, I was thinking as you were saying that, like, if you're saying those kinds of dialogue, like, yeah, but like, I get all of these things from this job, I should be grateful for it. That should be like a big red flag of, oh, this might not be right for me. I need to inquire within, because yeah, we are literally masking the truth when we do that. And yeah, that was such an incredible moment when you came to that retreat the next week. And like, my reaction was just like, wow, you rose to the assignment of your life in that moment. You listened and you said, nah, I don't know where this is going to go, but I trust, because I know that this doesn't feel right. And so there's got to be something better.
Yeah, I think I had bypassed enough choice points at that point. Like, I had outsourced my power for so long, and I just felt like the right invitation to say yes to, especially because I was experiencing all of these synchronicities, and I feel like I never really paid attention to synchronicities before, because I was so rooted in that like safe place of toxic gratitude, thinking, okay, but this is safe. I've got a steady paycheck and the job market is so competitive, which, oh my gosh, I have so many views on that. Like, my new favorite line is that scarcity is fake news. It's fake fucking news, people. But yeah, I came to, finally acknowledging all of these synchronicities. Like, I found my coach. That was not by mistake. And I was in my body when I said, yes, here, take thousands of dollars of my money. Like, I need this. Because there was a point where she told me the price of her 4-month container. And my initial reaction was like to throw up. I was like, oh my God, that is twice. It's more than my university tuition for a semester. And I was just like, my first reaction was like, this is so extra. Like, who are you to be spending this amount of money on yourself? Which is why I knew I had to do it. Because I was like, whoa, this is my reaction? Girl's got some mindset blocks to work through.
Yeah, it's also, once you get into your body, you can look at what you looked at with that decision of like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of stories that can play out here. Like, I want to barf about this. It scares me. Oh, but in kind of an interesting way. Like, I'm kind of excited about how it scares me. If we're only just like day to day walking through life and doing the same things over and over again, then nothing's really challenging us in that way where we have to question, like, well, who am I here in this decision-making process, and who do I want to be? Because we always have that choice.
And who am I here to become? Right? I think that's the glass ceiling it was for me for a really long time, where I thought, well, I'm just here. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be in 5 years, where I'm going to be, who I'm going to be in 5 years. I don't want to think about that. It was too scary. But now I find that question is so exciting and so expansive. Who am I here to become? Like, I can't believe I spent so much of my life scared of that question. I was so scared of that question. Tell me what limiting belief you are aware of and working through right now.
I'm still in the process of working through all that money stuff. Like, it's still, like, the wheel is still turning is the image that I have, because I did just open a business which required me to face a lot of different glass ceilings that I had over my own head, in terms of, like, being an entrepreneur in that way, where I'm not actually doing the work. Like, I own the business. I'm the CEO, which I have never been. I've never had people running the face of the business for me, and me just being behind it, moving the money around, really. So that's a big deal. That's something I've never done, and that comes with its different challenges as that grows and becomes the vision that I had for it. And so, will it ever end? I don't know, but it's just like showing up to the next step of it, of, ooh, okay, that feels a little scratchy or like abrasive, rubbing up against this next level of it. What's there? So lots of that money stuff is still playing out. And then I have like a voice in my head that she doesn't have a name, but she's the one that says all the stuff. The devil. And I just keep letting her talk. Like, I'll just say her dark, twisted things out loud. My partner hears a lot of that. And like, so this is where my mind's going when we're talking about things. And he just listens. And he listens to how sick and twisted and dark sometimes it is, how devastating it is. But in my work, I share this too. It's like, it's not you, it's just a thought form. But it needs to be heard, because if it doesn't, it becomes a part of the body and it turns into a symptom, or it turns into disease. And so a lot of the space holding that I do is just facilitating that. Well, two things is a vulnerability that's so terrifying to most of us, because the one thing that we all need and want in this life is to be seen, but we're so terrified. It's like, without going into it too far, maybe another podcast episode, one of the things that we are looking to confirm from the moment that the egg and the sperm meet each other is, do I exist? Do I matter? Do I belong here? We are constantly searching for that. And so if that need isn't met, then we're just going to keep searching for it, and not always in positive ways. Likely not. It's like, well, I matter here because I have to meet this quota at work, and I have to suffer for that. Like, that's one of the stories that sometimes will play out, just to get that confirmation of like, well, I'm needed here. But a lot of what I do is really just like holding that very vulnerable and tender space of actually witnessing the client that I'm with, and witnessing them in that raw feeling of, well, I'm finally being witnessed and I hate it, or it feels so uncomfortable because I have dark things or shame or guilt that I'm also holding. Feelings, just emotions that I'm holding to. And then the other part is just being able to help folks name everything that they're feeling, all the thoughts, all the actual emotions, because that's all our body wants. And then it can actually release us from the cage of containment that we're in, that we thought was where we wanted to be or what was safest, but it was actually just contraction.
The cage of containment sometimes feels so comfortable, but that's what growth is. It's breaking into that next level. And I think something you said about, will this ever be like done with? I don't know. And, you know, I think this kind of journey is just that. It is a journey. And I think that's a beautiful thing, because it means that there's always going to be another level available to you. And I mean, until we hit the city, obviously, until we become Buddha, basically. But the fact that you're working through these self-imposed glass ceilings, I think that's amazing, because every time you break through one, yes, there's going to be another one waiting for you. But how beautiful is that you get to keep elevating and keep expanding into that next level, and you keep growing into another level of you. You get to be reborn every day, and maybe every day you have a new glass ceiling, but it's there to challenge you and to initiate you. And I think you're a beautiful example of seeing that adversity as the learning opportunity that it is, and as the expansion opportunity that it is. So there's so many directions that I could go with that one answer, Brit, but I know that we're strapped for time here. So I'd like to finish off with just like a little speed round. I think I'll do 5 questions. We'll see if I can remember them all. 5. So I guess I'm just going to swivel the mic fast. And the whole point is, you're just going to, what first thing that comes up, okay? Okay, let's start with ideal vacation spot.
Anywhere with a beach.
Yeah, you're a water sign?
I think so.
Okay. Your next business venture could be anything in the world.
To not necessarily something, but just like the lifestyle. I'm going to get to a place where I am not trading time for money anymore as my main source of income. That's where I'm going.
Yeah. Love that. Financial stability or like massive uncertainty and risks in life?
I mean, historically, I am the latter, because I just trust. I've had hardly anything and had everything I needed. And now I'm in more financial abundance, and I just have, it's like money has just become energy now. It's like, now I see how it just moves, because it's just energy.
Best advice you've ever received? And I want to hear the worst advice you've ever received. First thing that comes to mind.
Oh my gosh. The best advice I've ever received was from my dear friend Holly, who is also a mother. And she told me to lean in. And that was during the early days of postpartum as a new mom. But it has become a mantra for me of whenever you feel like this pushback of, I don't know, I actually just feel a somatic experience of leaning in and like becoming more like enmeshed with whatever energy I was repulsed by. And like, I'm just going to lean in and see what happens. Worst advice I've ever received. To be honest, I don't take a lot of advice. I am very apprehensive of taking anyone's advice, because I find that a lot of advice is given without really sitting. And I'll use a specific example in my line of work. Like when I ask for a recommendation of someone like a physiotherapist or a massage therapist, if someone gives me a recommendation without specifically describing how it changed their life or how they gathered something from it or what the techniques that were used were, then it's not a recommendation to me. It's like, you're just telling me your opinion that I should just do something that you've done. And so I really long for people to sit with their advice for a little bit longer and be willing to get vulnerable and share, well, why is that a truth? Like, why is that advice so real? There should be a story behind it. And I find a lot of people don't have a story. They're just like, well, I don't know, I just read it yesterday. It's like, well, then why would I change my whole life trajectory around that?
Oh my God, I think I take too much advice. I'm taking this. I'm like, you know what? I didn't ask. I'm closing my ears to this. I love that.
Yeah, or ask questions. And if they get confronted by you asking questions, be like, awesome for you. I'm going to do something else. Or take it with a grain of salt.
Thank you for that. That's like perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for this conversation, Brit. I can't wait to make this available to the public. I think there are so many nuggets of wisdom and magic. Like, there's some magic in this. And I knew that you were the person to be sat on this couch with me. Who knows? Maybe we'll be in a studio this time next year, whatever it looks like, right? We get to dream big. We get to have expansive visions. And I'm so, so grateful that you are my first formal guest. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing your energy with me.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. Yeah, I treat it as a sign that I am really living my authentic path now because you noticed. And I think that's a key layer to us, like living out our authentic life, whatever that definition is for all of us, is like people notice. They're like, oh, I think I want to be around that because there's a vibe. So thanks for seeing me.
Of course. For people who are interested in finding you off of this podcast, I'm sure we'll share some links in the description, but where can people find you?
I am in practice in Halifax, Nova Scotia, mostly at Nature Folk in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. That's where I do all my osteopathic work. I do have the capacity to do some of it online. And then I treat my Instagram as my business card. So it's my online business card. You can go check out my Instagram, anatomy.ofbeing, and you will see what my work is like. And I call it my biases. Like, we all have our biases and our beliefs. And so you'll see my biases within my work. I believe that your body's an innately intelligent, wise part of you. So that's my biggest bias, is I know that you can heal yourself. It's just, can we get your regulation to a state where you can actually feel that and operate from it?
Okay, so listeners, do yourself a favor and follow Brit, anatomy.ofbeing. That's her Instagram handle. And if you're in Halifax, look her up for an aura photography session, because that is something that is now on my list, and we will talk about that offline. Thank you so much. Okay. Oof, such an expansive conversation with Brit. I'm sure you had your own aha moments and breakthroughs. I'd love to hear them. Drop them in the comments or send me a DM on Instagram at Coach Jess O'Kane. You can also follow me on LinkedIn. Jessica O'Kane is my LinkedIn handle. Be sure to subscribe for weekly episodes. I'm so excited to share the other conversations. Next up is a conversation with Erica Rankin, serial entrepreneur and badass purpose-driven leader. Until then, sending you so much love and reminding you, you get to be your own person. And the world is truly a better place when you let your authenticity shine. So go, shine that light of yours, unapologetically, because that's what we need more of. Thank you for being here. Catch you next week.